Gunji Koizumi, 1885 to 1965, introduced judo to England. President and founder of the Budokai, national coach and founder of the British Judo Association, GK was a master of judo, jiu-jitsu, kenjutsu, the art of the sword, kendo and katsu, the art of resuscitation. Art dealer and Chinese lacquer expert by trade, he was also an artist and an electrical engineer. Koizumi was teaching judo until the day before he died in April 1965, altogether spending over 64 years in judo, and apart from 9 months in 1906 and 1907, he was a strict amateur. At his death, he held the Kodokan grade of 8th Dan.
He was a wonderful chap. He had a wonderful personality, very friendly, and you could describe him as a gentleman.
Koizumi Gunji was born in the village of Komatsuka in Ibaraki province, 20 miles north of Tokyo, Japan, on the 8th of July 1885, the younger son of a tenant farmer, Koizumi Shukichi, and his wife Katsu.
The farms, they're all clustered together, not out in the fields. And apparently this goes back to the time of the samurai and the ronin, that they bunched together for protection.
Mm-hmm. Ibaraki was an apt origin for the boy who was to become the keystone of judo in Europe. Kashima Jingu, located in Ibaraki Prefecture, is a renowned shrine which originates from the time of the enthronement of Japan's first emperor, Jimmu, nearly 3,000 years ago. The shrine was dedicated to the kami god of kenjutsu, Takemikazuchi no Okami, a god of martial valor. One of the oldest known forms of kenjutsu, called Ashima no Tachi, was created at the Kashima shrine. Koizumi embarked on his lifelong fascination with the martial arts, starting kendo and kenjutsu at school when he was 12.
But when he was a boy, there was a little river. The bridge, and his father had forbidden him to go into the river, presumably unless he was there, you see. But of course, boys are boys, and the other boys were splashing around in the river. And he was down there, and he looked up and saw his father coming along the road. So he hid under the bridge until the father had gone past. And then he came out, went to put his clothes on, but the clothes had gone. His father had taken his clothes with him. And this little boy had to walk home naked.
As the younger son, there were only 2 paths open to Koizumi: start his own farm or be adopted into a family without a male heir, a Japanese custom. He liked neither option, so at the age of 15 he left home to seek his fortune in Tokyo. Once in Tokyo, he enrolled as a trainee telegrapher under a government scheme. It was during this period, at age 16, that he studied jiu-jitsu at the Tenshin Shinyo-ryu, a leading school of jiu-jitsu under Master Nobushige Tago. Koizumi recollects quite an impressive figure with a long grey beard. He was a good teacher, kind and gentle, but in randori one day, soon after I'd started training, he gave me some terrific kicks, wild pushes and pulls. Then abruptly stopping, he quietly asks me, "Do you know that's what you're doing to me?" Since then, how often have I been reminded of this episode by the zeal of eager beginners. Once qualified as a telegrapher, he worked for a while in Tokyo before volunteering to work on the railways in Korea. In 1904, Koizumi travelled to Fusen, where he studied at a school run by an ex-samurai of the Owari clan, Sensei Nobukatsu Yamada. Yamada taught him the techniques of Shin-Shin-Ryu, Jujutsu and Katsu. By now, another ambition had arisen. He wanted to study electricity. The best place to do that was in America. Having little money, he decided to work his way to the West in a series of hops, which he did via Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore and India. By 1905, at age 20, Koizumi had reached Singapore, where the previous year a handful of Japanese had gathered together to form the first judo club. Koizumi, one of the founding members, was taught the 144 techniques of Akishima Ryu and Katsu. The technique consisted of throws, locks and blows, many of which were of doubtful practical value. However, Koizumi owes Sensei Akishima much for his instruction in the technical essentials, which were taught in the olden days only to those who were approved by the teacher. Arriving in Prestatyn, North Wales, in May 1906, Koizumi stayed for 12 months instructing at the Kara Ashigaga School of Jiu-Jitsu in Liverpool, the Piccadilly School of Jiu-Jitsu, the Polytechnic and the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve. He arrived in London on August Bank Holiday 1906 and took a job as a teacher at the Jiu-Jitsu school in Golden Square, Soho, which had been set up a few years earlier by Uyenshi Raku. At this time, Jiu-Jitsu was much in vogue, with Yukio Tani, Taro Miyake, Raku Uyenshi, Ikitaro Ono touring the music halls. 9 months later, in 1907, he had saved enough to sail for America. Once there, and after several minor jobs, he was employed as an electrician's help at the Newark Public Service Railway Company, learning practical electrical engineering and also attending evening classes and taking a correspondence course. Feeling confident of his ability, he returned to London in 1910 and attempted to set up as an electrician in Vauxhall Bridge Road. But to set up a business, one needs what he did not have, capital. This caused another change of plan. Seeking an occupation more akin with his artistic leanings, he studied lacquer work and set up a business based on this. Success followed, and within a few years he had 13 or 14 people working for him and numbered the Queen Mary and Lord Kitchener among his clients. When he returned from America, Koizumi reported that the music hall interest in jiu-jitsu, wrestling and strongman acts had ceased, and with the exception of Tani, who was to remain here for the rest of his life, all the others had left Britain. By 1917, married and with a thriving business, Koizumi felt that he had to make some contribution to his adopted country. When asked why he never became British, he would give a gentle laugh and, pointing to his face, remark, "The face is wrong." The contribution took the form of starting an institute for the study of martial arts and their related cultural activities. In 1918, he found and leased 2 shops in Lower Grosvenor Place, Victoria. The premises opened on January 26, 1918. The first chief instructor was Yukio Tani. The Budokai was originally a Japanese community centre and was frequented by members of the Japanese Imperial Army and Navy and their families who were stationed in London. Although the Budokai was a judo club, judo was still often referred to as jiu-jitsu in the early 1900s. It was not until 1920 that the word judo actually became widespread. In 1920, Koizumi and Tani were teaching their jiu-jitsu method when Jigoro Kano, the founder of Kodokan Judo, visited the club in July whilst en route to the Olympic Games in Antwerp. Hikoichi Aida and E.J. Harrison, both Kodokan Dan grades and members of the Budokai, persuaded Koizumi and Tani to convert to judo. This was agreed to, and both Tani and Koizumi were awarded their Kodokan Judo Nidan, second dan, in recognition of their technique and status. From there on, judo was formally taught at the Budokai, and this can be recognized as the starting point of British judo. GK started a Sunday afternoon study group as a study of mechanical principles in relation to the human body, coordinated action of the whole body, and to use it most efficiently, as opposed to what it described as 2 strong lads using sheer force to pound each other into the mat. Judo as a competitive art, or a means of mental and physical training, or of moral and spiritual education, fundamentally evolves on the principle of balance, as do all things in the universe. In action, balance must be retained, yet to achieve an object, one must run the risk of losing it. In this enigma of the natural law, judo finds its life as a sport and combative art. Under the circumstances of contest or combat, to judge clearly and to command quick action, one must have calm mental balance. This mental balance depends in turn on the spiritual balance. or a clear conscience. Thus it will be seen that the study of judo does not remain solely on the physical plane. Also, despite the drastic nature of its objectives, judo is not prone to be submissive to the influence of an evil power. In fact, the maxim of judo is, least used, best served.
He impressed on us that force must be used in moderation and always in the right direction. There's this business these days in so much jigotai, in defence. In those days, everybody was more relaxed on the mat. It was more enjoyable. The training was there and the skill was there. We had some remarkable chaps who were not tough in any way, but the skill was very high.
Koizumi drew on his jiu-jitsu background in devising a system of self-defense.
It was devised by Mr. Koizumi to show so that, you see, that lock is visible to an audience. And the throw is clearly visible.
Many of the moves demonstrated are not now allowed in modern judo.
This would not be allowed in judo as a sport. Now these are pure jiu-jitsu tricks, mainly directed against the wrist. On a pavement, that would knock out the man who took the throw.
Yes, I remember being told in Japan by a self-defense expert that one had to be very careful if you did actually throw someone, that you must protect the head as much as possible.
Yes, because they don't know and panic, and the head goes back.
The relationship between some of Koizumi's techniques, jiu-jitsu, aikido, and judo, are clearly demonstrated.
He takes the stick away, and he could use it. They have tried this, in fact, and with a dummy gun, and in fact the defence can be got on before it can be fired.
It looks very slow here, purely as you say, because it is for demonstrative purposes.
Yes, this is not slow motion. The arm could be broken there.
A lot of this kind of technique must have come from Aikido.
Aikido came from this. These are old jiu-jitsu tricks, yes. Aikido systematized. It was one school called I Told You.
Koizumi had a very droll sense of humour. For many years he completed his tax return in Japanese. As the tax inspector said, there was nothing to stop him doing this, so we had to get it translated.
There was occasion a with Palmer, Charlie's jogging up the hill in his jag, and he overtakes a lorry. He left it a bit late. I mean, the crest of the hill was sort of 50 yards away or something, and he was on the wrong side of the road, and another lorry sort of turned up, you see, and things were pretty desperate, and Charlie managed to swerve off up a grassy bank, and and everybody was shaken except Koizumi, who sort of got out and looked at the flower and picked him and said, "Look at that, you see." Beautiful. Another passenger said to Koizumi, "Could you sort of get Charlie to slow down a bit?" And Koizumi said, "Oh, don't worry, he doesn't want to kill himself."
The judo here looks very upright compared with a lot of the judo that's played today. What do you think about that?
Well, we were setting a sort of model in those days. So we didn't want to set a model of bent judo.
Well, the Daisharin isn't a technique that one sees today. It's rather
it's
rare.
Sort of ideal form. The man's brought off balance. And you notice the thrower keeps his posture very well.
Yes.
He ends up in a good balanced posture, so he could take another opponent if necessary.
Here we've got the hand techniques, and it seems to, in the first one, pull like this, indicating he's going to throw to the right, deceiving the man, and then turning over and taking him to the left.
He's using the reaction, isn't he?
Yes. But you can really see how the hands have to be used in this.
It's transmitted only through the hands. There's no catching with the leg.
Did you grip the leg there, or just put the hand behind?
Yes, he just put the hand behind it and grip it. That's a very old type of throw.
Again, if you compare the belts, you can see how he gets right down. When the man resists, then he just lifts him up.
That's the straight throw. Now we're going to see where there's a resistance.
Resistance, he drops, and then he lifts in the civic komi, lifting hip.
He keeps his posture very well at the end of the throw. Doesn't fall on top of the other man.
And considering the other man seems quite a bit heavier than he is,
yes,
he's maintaining his balance very well.
You see that posture at the end? That's very good.
Rather nasty one to take a fall from. Yes. I wouldn't like to be there.
No.
It's slow now. He's crept round the back, lifted him up on his hips, and walked away, virtually, isn't he?
Still keeping his balance very well.
The man's tried a left Hanigoshi there. Yeah. He's slipped past and pushed his hip through.
Squeeze, this is a very old one. There it is, yeah. That was the sort of throw that used to be kept absolutely secret, and it used to be a great surprise.
And this would have belonged to one particular school, perhaps?
Yes, very likely, yes. Somewhere in a place like Nagasaki. Now, there it is.
But he's turned round, hasn't he?
Yes.
Look at the man.
To face him at the end, yes. Well, this is one of the commonest and best throws in judo. Yes.
There it's more like a gake, sort of gake, isn't it?
Yes, I suppose we'd think of it like that.
He's pulled the man down to pin him onto his right leg before he sweeps it away.
That used to be done with a sort of blow of the heel at the back of the leg.
So that it would numb the leg. But just there, it goes in.
Used to, yes, strike at the opposite leg. But that's not allowed now. Yes, the feature of his style is that he keeps the arms well separated. Kanibasami, I think this is now forbidden, but it used to be quite an effective, especially in self-defense.
I think you can still see Kanibasami occasionally.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It's quite a dangerous throw, but it's a great surprise for the other man.
The arms seem to pin quite a lot.
Yes, that's again. You see, the arms are wide.
Yeah.
That was one of the features of his style.
When he's throwing here Makikami, he has some sort of consideration from the man, for the man underneath, not
Yes.
exactly falling on top of him,
No.
but just pinning him to the mat.
Yes, yes. His right hand's coming out and taking most of his own weight.
These throws we've seen more and more. Were they quite common in the past?
They come from jiu-jitsu. Some of them were used against men with armour. It's difficult to raise high into the air, but they often brought the man down on the shoulder tip, so they were not encouraged.
Because one of the important things of judo is the Ren Rakuwaza, and not just doing 2 throws, but sometimes as many as 3 or 4. I mean,
It can be like a chess combination, yes. 2 or 3 moves there. There it is, against the resistance. Kochi followed by Hanegoshi.
he resists the Haraigoshi and then he goes into Osotogari.
These, of course, are idealized forms. They're like the sentences in a book on grammar. They're perfectly constructed. And in actual practice, we attempt to get it as clear as this.
No, but you've got to try.
Yes, just.
I think a lot of people, when they're practicing judo, they think, well, I can only ever get half in, so I'll only do my uchikomi from that half. And then they automatically then can only do a quarter.
He was a wonderful person. He never got annoyed. When he spoke to you, it was as if you were the only one there. He had so much knowledge that you just listened. You never said a word, you just listened to him. And when he used to come in, you could feel that there was a person who you looked up to.
He seems very willing to move from one hold to another. He doesn't hold on necessarily to the last moment.
No, no. That again is a principle of judo. Hold tightly, but let go lightly. Once it's gone, the position, then not to hang on to it, but to move very quickly to another one. Yes, he's moving around both sides of the body too, able to exercise the control from both sides with equal facility. These are not allowed.
Well, these are neck locks and they're not allowed, they're forbidden.
Again, that wouldn't be allowed. Nor would this.
In 1955, Koizumi returned for a visit to Japan and saw his family and schoolmates, and was also feted by the Kodokan. His guide on this trip was T. Daigo, and he was frequently accompanied by the youthful Charles Palmer, who returned to England with him at the end of his visit. Quote, "Now I am privileged to repose at the end of the dojo and indulge in kuchiwaza, mouth technique."
His trip to Japan after 50 years the Kodokan, and they held a dinner at the Hill Hotel. Kano made a speech, Rise Kano that is. His retirement money, he spent it all travelling around teaching judo. At one stage, his daughter put a bit in the bulletin, he's getting on, take care of him, He shared a house with Mrs. Boulding. Mrs. Boulding was his wife's best friend. She said this little old man would come back and he was so tired he couldn't do anything for sort of 2 days. And then, of course, the end came. Now, we knew that this was a possibility, but there's nothing you could do about it.
On April the 15th, 1965, the nearly 80-year-old Koizumi, by now an 8th Dan, having decided that he no longer had the strength to do more for British judo, and not wishing to be a burden, took his own life. He had been on the Budokai's mat teaching the previous day. When asked that evening while being driven home what he would most like to happen, he replied, "To see people think for themselves and not be led